My teacher, the Venerable Master Shren Hua, taught that education is the most effective form of national defense. He said that education saves people's lives and people's souls, and he urged educators to promote social justice, open-mindedness, and great courage in training the future leaders of the world. As a nearly lifelong educator, I'm thrilled that this panel has been devoted to beyond mindfulness in education. The moderator for this panel is the CEO of Blue Goji, who in 2010 launched the Coleman Fung Institute for Engineering Leadership right here at UC Berkeley's College of Engineering. Please welcome our moderator, Coleman Fung.
Okay. Good afternoon. I hope you guys have a wonderful morning and lunch hour, and you are ready to join us in this very exciting conversation. First of all, let me introduce you to our wonderful panel. Well, Professor Lancaster, you all met earlier, so I think we can skip you for now. Thank you. And then next to Professor Lancaster is Wangmo Dixie. She is the Executive Director of Dharma College. She is truly a product of Berkeley, born and raised here locally. In addition to her role being the director of the college, she is also the Executive Director of the Light of Buddha Dharma Foundation International and President of International Buddhist Association of America. So she is very involved with the Dharma teaching and the educational aspect of that. And next to her is Professor Stephen Murray Shigematsu. I hope I didn't mess up with the name. I'm terrible with that. Stephen is a psychologist with a doctoral from Harvard University and training in clinical and community psychology, yoga, meditation, and Chinese medicine. He was a professor of education at the University of Tokyo and director of International Counseling Center. Currently at Stanford University, he co-founded the life work programs in contemplative and integrative education. And last but not least is Professor Doug Power. Doug Powers is a professor and administrator at Dharma Ram Buddhist University in Ukiah, where he teaches classes relating to Buddhism and Western philosophy. He first met Buddhism back in 1973, and since then he has been very actively involved in envisioning how Buddhism can inform higher education in America. So I think we have a group of wonderful experts in the area of education. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I'm really a make-believe Buddhist. I really don't have any traditional Buddhist sort of learning or heritage. I grew up in Hong Kong and went through the almost finished secondary school. And let me just make one simple comment. The Buddhist system with a Chinese characteristic is the worst of the possible combinations. And so I always actually hated school. I know even though I went to school here in Stanford, I just put up with it. I find the school, the mechanic is so rigid. Everything is so prescriptive. Everything is defined and one-dimensional. So intelligence, first of all, it's not just how well you can answer some of these, tricky questions or mindful subjects. But the fact that everything is just so deterministic to me, it's just I don't know how I survived all these years. And the one thing that I really learned from the fellowship program, because it's really about teamwork. So one of the students actually came to me near the end. She said to me, Coleman, I love the program so much. because that's the only class I can come to, and I felt so embraced by my peer. And instead of worrying how I'm going to outcompete all the fellow students. So this is where we are at today. You think about the education system from the very young age, all the way through college to grad school. You are on this rigid system, force competition on you. There's no option. You don't even think about it. You are, that part of that system is so ingrained. You are always in competition. You are always being judged. And, so as we experienced the discussions earlier, what did we have? Monkey mind. That's mentioned quite a few times. We talk about the climate change, the condition, how we actually separating ourselves, from the environment, from this wonderful earth. And that competition, like this winner takes all model. Look at what we are dealing with today, the level of inequalities. Think about all the recent college admission scandals, right? We are forcing students to create these perfect profile. So again, yesterday we heard about in the West how difficult for people to accept themselves just the way they are, being imperfect. So to me, that is the root cause. I like to make these crazy statements because that's, just carrying on my troublemaker persona. I think all this problem starts at the education level because we are teaching our kids. They are being conditioned from this young all the way up. How do you outcompete? How do you outdo others? To the point where it's counterproductive. Berkeley is consistently ranked not only as a top university, but also ranked as one of the most stressful campuses. And that's where we are. So I'm just so happy to be here because I can, really hope to learn from you guys. So I'm going to open up and see. Lou, do you want to start?
Well, if I might have just a personal moment for just a second, I'd like to say Coleman has been one of the great contributors to our campus. And he's started these centers, and he's helped with buildings, and he's been so generous. But of all the people I know who are in his range of ability to give, he's the only one that I have ever known who would fund a conference and then participate in it. It's number one. I love it.
Thank you, Lou.
I'll just make one statement about education from my perspective. I've been studying Buddhism now for over 60 years. I've watched it go through all kinds of permutations. It is my belief with what you are doing, Coleman, that one of the things that we must teach our young students today is you cannot do it by yourself any longer. You cannot have the idea that the single brain is the only way to study because it's so complex, so much data. So my current research project where I'm working on the Atlas of Maritime Buddhism, I figure out that I've had almost 700 people helping me with that project. And that's the only way it could be done. So you can say it's my project, but it really isn't. And when you form these units of people who are willing to cooperate together and understand that research is not competitive, real research is, hooray for you, you found something. And when I find something, you're going to say, hooray for me. And we put it all together. That's the only way education in the future can progress. And we need to start teaching our students. Find your cohorts. Find your partners. Find the people who can help you and will join with you. And I hope that we can reach a point where we have doctoral dissertations that have multiple authors, because I think that is where education ought to go.
We would have to change the financial incentive for the faculties, which would be another big challenge.
Yes.
I have to admit and confess that I'm not an educator or a professional in education. I'm here really as a parent, and as Coleman mentioned, I'm the director at Dharma College. First, really, my deep, deep thanks to you, Coleman, because of you, we can all be here together. And that takes perhaps lifetimes of what we call merit to be able to bring Buddhists and non-Buddhists in Berkeley, at UC Berkeley campus, where I think this has happened for the first time. There are many institutions here who've been 50 years in institution in terms of its birth. My father came here in 1968, and Professor... Yes, my father was sponsored by Professor Louis Lancaster in terms of, he came here as a Tibetan refugee. So we've seen over the last 50 years so many of these Buddhist organizations and spiritual organizations come up. And so it's really just wonderful that you've been able to provide this platform for all of us to come together. Now, in terms of education, I feel that very much what you've just mentioned about building community and building organizations coming together with expertise so we can really address the human potential. And especially when it comes to grades and competition, I have 2 teenage kids. My son is in the front here. And they're really faced with so much stress and focusing on trying to achieve a very tight spot to get into the very best universities. And that kind of stress leads to immediate burnout. So we really have to bring more caring, maybe more meditation, more mindfulness into our school systems, where we can take pause and really reflect who is doing this. And I think that kind of attention in a curriculum, bringing caring into a curriculum would be very important.
Thank you. Steve?
So I've been doing different programs at Stanford University for quite a few years, and they really, maybe I'll just mention the origin of them. They started because I had been living in Tokyo, and I came over on a sabbatical and really liked it here and ended up staying, but Stanford has a system called the Resident Fellow, where you actually can live with the students. And that's when I learned about what they call the Stanford Duck Syndrome, which is that Stanford students appear to be very happy and serene and peaceful, and they smile and they look so beautiful, but underneath they're really struggling. And so I could see the pain, and the suffering among the students who would appear by our social standards to be the ones that are the most successful, the ones who have achieved what they had been striving for through their whole lives. Some of them wanted to go to Stanford since they were 5 years old, and they've achieved that, and yet they are realizing that that's not the most meaningful thing in life, what they've achieved, and that they're simply on, what's that thing the hamster's on, kind of going around and around, or they're on this rat race to nowhere. And it's what they're valued for, as they've told me many times, is for what they can achieve. And sadly, that's even their own families, their own parents give them that kind of a message, that as long as you're achieving, you're our son and daughter. But if you're not achieving, you don't have the same value, and that whole value system permeates the whole Silicon Valley. I thought we were escaping from Tokyo academic pressure to come here, but it wasn't the case at all. So, and at the same time, we lived in Palo Alto near we lived in the university, but at the Palo Alto High School, which was said to be one of the best high schools in the country. The day before school started, my son's friend committed suicide right in the railroad tracks near our house. And that same year, four other kids from the same high school also took their own lives. And so for me, it was really a turning point in my life, the serene life of a college professor, and I had to ask myself, what can I do? And I like that expression, think global but act local. And I said, well, what can I do? I can offer classes. I have to offer classes. Students have to take classes. Could we offer classes that students really want? Students want to know about, why are we here? What is the purpose of my life? How can I fulfill the responsibility I feel as a human being on this planet? What can I do? How can I do that? And the way I found was, I had been a psychotherapist, and I felt like that wasn't what I wanted to do, and the whole college counseling system is totally in a state of being overwhelmed by the demands. And so I thought about healing, where most places in the world takes place in community. It doesn't take place by one expert who has all the knowledge and can give that healing knowledge to everybody, but it takes place in community. And so I set up courses that I call the Heartfulness courses, and we come together and I like the image of the samurai coming into the tea house, in which the door is very narrow, so you have to take off your swords, you have to take off your armor, and the door is very shallow, it's short. So you have to lower your head and bow to get into the tea room, and once you're in the tea room, you're equal with everybody else. And the tea master is simply there as a facilitator. So our classes begin in that way. We do appreciative learning. We appreciate each other's contributions. We share our stories. We believe that we can share our own vulnerabilities, and find that itself, beginning in that mindful place, brings on compassion, brings on a sense of responsibility to each other. And I have them call me sensei, which is a nice, Japanese word for the teacher, but I say that it doesn't have to be hierarchical. The meaning simply means, by the Chinese characters, one who lives before you. So I offer myself as an elder, somebody who is there that they can see as a guide. But otherwise, it's really about collective knowing, appreciative learning, and it's whatever we can achieve as a community.
So I know some of you up here, and I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing. I'll just say a few words about what we're trying to do at the Dharma Realm Buddhist University, which is trying to do a different kind of model that takes into account a lot of the things we're talking about. First of all, the emphasis of the undergraduate and graduate work is on every text related to the quality of human experience, the quality of community, and the quality of the environmental context in which we live, the balance of the environment that we live in. So everything that's read is studied not for the critical review of it from criticism, but from reading the text to try to understand in it what it has to say, both for the individual and the group, in terms of what it says about the quality of human existence, the quality of our life, the quality of not only our own consciousness, but the quality of us together as a community. And so there's still responsibility, though, because it's very important that the students read the text carefully and bring that experience to class, because if they don't bring it to class, then it doesn't really have the equanimity of the group being able to bring all their different views into the classroom. So the teacher in this kind of a context plays a different role in sort of a leader of a discussion, trying to make sure the depth goes to the actual meaning and we don't lose the depth of the meaning. But if people in the class come to that meaning in their own conversation, then it doesn't need so much direction. If they don't always come to where the deeper meaning is, it might need a little direction. But the class isn't competing with each other. They're working together to all come to an equally creative and insightful insights into the curriculum. And it's not only Buddhist curriculum, but it takes them through the first 4 years in the undergraduate. It takes them all the way through the main text in Indian culture, the main text in Chinese culture, the main text in Western culture, the main text in mathematics and science in terms of the forming of the scientific and mathematical way of thinking. So rather than so zeroed in on content per se and memorization, it's more to the depth of each of the texts in terms of what it has to say, both to the person individually and collectively to the group. So we're trying to solve 4 or 5 of the issues that have been raised here already in the discussion, and taking that through accreditation was really interesting. Last year we got accredited, and taking through WASC meant that having to explain to WASC how each element of this actually fit an overall model that was consistent within itself is a worthwhile project in itself, because that discussion led to a really wide-ranging discussion about higher education as a whole. So we're only in the very early stages of this. The other aspect of it that is built in is some meditation as our lab work. So if we're reading a text, there's many Buddhist texts that are talking about experience that if you haven't had some experience of meditation or mindfulness, you wouldn't know what's being referenced. They're not intellectual concepts. They're pointing to experience. Therefore, you need to provide the skills that are necessary to be able to be mindful and meditate in all the different forms of meditation and awareness, so that there's not only just an intellectual understanding of the text, but actually using the text directly to have insights into the concept. So we even break out of the class every semester for a more intensive meditation, and along the way during the class there's constant practice along with the text, particularly if the practice is necessary to understanding that text. So that's just some ideas that we've been working with.
So that's probably the most collaborative way of learning I've seen or I heard.
Well, because the laboratory, the thing is there's many measurable, not only in terms of the person themselves, but also in terms of other kind of measure. Because when you think of meditation, the reason for studying the text is give you a sense of direction into the mind. But once you have a sense of that direction in the mind to what you're looking for to observe, then you can not only observe thoughts and emotions, but you can observe the body actually tensing. You can actually see where the tensions in the body occur. And this is where younger people in the elementary and the high school, we also have elementary and high school, you have to develop a total curriculum that relates to the place that different people are in their maturation and development. And so earlier on, you want to have reference to their actual physical experiences that relate to things. And as you move on, you don't want to start with such abstraction. You want to start with the immediate experience that people are having.
Yeah, Doc, I think you raise a really good point that I think, in order to understand the world we live in, we have to go to sort of a reductionist approach to understand the component. But somehow I feel like once we break out these components, like psychology or electrical engineering, they are means to an end, meaning understanding whatever bigger problem that we are dealing with. But somehow these they just become the end in itself. So at university, since I'm very involved here and not so involved in other places, they all talk about interdisciplinary study, but they are all fake, labels. There's no such thing. The professors, if they happen to have good relationship with truly someone else in a different department, yes, it will happen. Otherwise, it's just all BS. And in fact, here's a story. This gentleman I met from Moore's Foundation, when they first started the foundation, they have 3 objectives. One of the objectives was to fund interdisciplinary study. At Penhall, he's actually a famous professor here. And he basically said, after a year, listening to all these propaganda messages from different university presidents, they completely dropped the initiative because they were just all, talk. So that's the problem we have, is that we're separating. So even at high school level, we are creating this discipline, almost like in isolation. There's no contact. Like, the way Buddha talked about, hey, don't just take my word for it. Go out and try it out yourself and see if it works for you. But there's no such thing within what I'm trying to bring that into the program, and it's a struggle. So I don't know, how can we incorporate more of that?
Well, the missing element is the actual experience of the person. There's only one place that makes contact, and that's in the actual conscious awareness of the person who's studying. Everything else is just content. I think the Buddhist division into the conditional, the imagined, and the real is a really nice way to put this. The conditioned is science, studies the conditioned fairly well in a limited realm. The totality of the interconnected web of the imagined is the theories that we put to that. The language theories, the scientific, the mathematical theories. And then the Buddha added this element of the real, meaning the actual experience that's occurring. So we need to get back to the actual experience that's occurring in the awareness of the student. And you start from there, and then the other elements, those are just aspects of our experience. That's the content of our experience. And we can include all of those. And we have a lot of knowledge about the imagined and the conditioned today. And we've done a lot of work on that. The problem is if it doesn't start with the real, it completely loses the foundation to human awareness and consciousness from where it all emanates and where it all comes back to. If we lose touch with that, then we lose the fundamental ground of the whole experience.
Well, I think that's also part of the reason we're having so many issues with mental health, Stephen, as you mentioned. At Cal, it's the same way. The students are very stressed. In fact, I think the suicide rate among college students has been going up in the last few years. So it's a huge issue, and students are not reaching out for help either. Stephen, would you like to comment on that a little bit more?
That's part of the reason I started the program I do, the Heartfulness program, because there's indications that half of American college students don't want to receive psychological counseling. So they were not going, or they would go once and say, it's not for me, or the counselor, I couldn't relate to the counselor. So I felt there had to be another way to do that.
Maybe that's an opportunity for the Buddhist organization. So instead of saying, hey, you have a mental problem, you should just come and, calm your mind.
Well, I come from my field of psychology, which is a social science, but everybody knows all psychologists have penis envy, right? And physics envy, I mean. That's an academic joke. We all have physics envy that we're trying to pretend we're a science like physics. But I find I like to pose the issue to them of mastery versus mystery. And that to the students that we're all engaged in this mastery and control. And then we need to, at some point, surrender and give up and say that there are places in life in which I need to also let go, and I need to embrace the mystery, because there's going to be power in embracing that mystery too.
I was just going to say about places and spaces for people to go to, and we have many Buddhist temples here in the Bay Area, and for example, Dharma College is right in the heart of downtown Berkeley, where we have the Berkeley High Campus just on the corner, and we see hundreds of students come out every day, and if we can just extend a welcoming space for them where they can sit in a circle and take time to pause, take time to just reflect inwards. So I think that we have great opportunity here in this assembly where we have the traditional temples, and I know that many of them do open up their temples to the youth. But if we can provide a welcoming space for them to enter in and create programs where we're linking in with our local high schools and being a place where the youth can feel comfortable and fun, and that there's not a barrier to entry.
I think that's a wonderful idea, because we can actually at least try it out as the Bay Area model, and maybe other universities will adopt it as well, so that not only, as part of our goal is to reach out, engage, and get more people involved, or at least learning more about Buddhism. I think that's a wonderful idea, Remo.
I'd just like to also say that we also have to find ways to communicate to this generation, and it's a language, and it's a way. I don't know if we have it yet. You know, I'm a parent, and I find myself, even though we have Buddhist symbols and Buddhist experiences, I remember I took my kids to Bodh Gaya, to the seat of enlightenment, and had my daughter sitting under the Bodhi tree and just letting her experience the taste of just stillness, of what that meant to be under this sacred Bodhi tree where this great being was fully enlightened. And I think she still carries that experience in her heart. And if we can give those kinds of experiences to them, to know that they have this extraordinary potential of being, they don't have to become a victim of this rat race cycle, and that they have more than just grades. They have more than just this competitive samsaric way, that there's a lot more there.
Great. Lou, do you have any comment?
I really worry about social action in Buddhism. When people start identifying the people that they're helping as poor, oppressed, etc., we're already putting them into a box. We're identifying them as people with troubles and problems. So I wish that Buddhism would follow its own teachings, which says whatever you do for all sentient beings. The Buddhists never say that you split those up. They constantly say all sentient beings. So it's like helping someone who needs food. It's not because they're poor or that we give them food. We give them food because they, like us, need food to live. There's nothing unusual about needing food. It's human. Nothing unusual about needing a house, some support over your head. That's just human. So we need to stop that kind of appropriation of what I think has been a failure of the Western social service, in which it makes people furious. It makes them angry. They are put down. And I see people standing outside a church to go in and eat lunch, and I think, why are they putting them on the sidewalk where they're identified as needy people? They should be sitting inside. They should be treated with the fact that they are just human and they need to eat. That's all. So I worry about this issue, and the same with our young people. I think we would have to be very careful not to identify them by their needs and their problems. They're just growing up as humans. And what they face is a human issue. And we need to treat them, I think. I'm not saying that you don't, by the way, I'm just looking at you. We just need to treat people with this kind of absolute respect. Because really what we are faced in this world is we are brothers and sisters in suffering. We are brothers and sisters with the three great messengers: illness, old age, and death. We all share this. So we can be compassionate with one another because this is what we face. And we should try to give as much dignity as we can.
Very well said. When it comes back to the education of students, before I did DRBU, I actually taught at Berkeley High for 40 years. From 69 to 09, I taught at Berkeley High. Because that was the place the whole society came together, and it was really interesting, and higher education's interesting, but not that interesting. the thing you learn from, I think I had 1/3 of all the graduates from Berkeley High for 40 years in my classes as a senior. There was something like 9,000 students or something. And the amazing thing is all of the students basically had the same issues and there's no difference when you get to the level of when there's respect, when there's mutual respect and so forth. What I want to say about the bringing it to education is the one thing a lot of the classes when I had opportunity in the pedagogy, I brought them over to the monastery because I actually lived over in the Berkeley Buddhist monastery at the same time. So I had a little bit of an advantage. And I could bring them over there for a week or two and do a meditation. And every one of them, if they got to do a little bit of meditation, they got to actually find the ground of their own mind that they could settle in and relax and didn't need to be competitive and didn't need to do all this stuff. And the surprise of that, it was a shocking surprise to every adolescent that they were okay in their own head, just paying attention to their own mind. And actually, it's a very simple thing. This is not a metaphysical, this is a purely secular thing. The next thing on our relationship to each other, generosity, for instance, the first paramita of the Mahayana. Generosity is not just something that's emanating for other people, it feels better in yourself. So in an adolescent, you need to take a person back to the feeling of generosity versus uptight, competitive. How does it feel in the gut and the heart to be competitive and constantly judgmental and so forth and irritated versus being generous and open-hearted? It feels different. So you have to take it on an adolescent level, you have to take it back to the feelings that people are actually feeling, because that's where they are these days, and not to the abstraction. So both the feeling of what it feels like to be generous and the mind observing that. The key is the feeling, the actual sense of the feeling of generosity, taking them back to that, and then the ability to observe the feeling of that's the secondary quality of that. Every adolescent, that actually doesn't take that long to teach humans, because that's their natural state, you know, so.
Great. So with the remaining time we have, I would like to offer each one of the panelists just to sum it up, and what is your advice or your view going forward on how we can, I know we can't drop all the grades and all the exams, but what can we do in the meantime? Who would like to go first?
Well, I would say for the Buddhists, they always say there is a way to test your wisdom. And the test for your wisdom is that when you have an insight, does it produce compassion? If it doesn't, the insight is of no value.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to just open up our space and just provide a place where we can bring together experts and parents and young people in the heart of downtown Berkeley to sit together and engage with these topics and just see where it goes. There's no, the first step is just trying and to be open to that dialogue and that conversation. I don't know if we have the answers yet, but if we can provide the space and the place for that to occur and the willingness and a commitment to that, I think we can go in new directions.
That's wonderful. We're going to follow on that. Thank you. Stephen?
In all of my classes, we simply sit in a circle, and when the students first come in, it's like a living room atmosphere, and they say, oh, it's a living room, it's really relaxed, and then they realize they have to face other students, and there's no desks, and so they got to take out their cell phones. But what I ask people to do is to do simply acknowledge each other's presence, and there's a beautiful Zulu word, sawubona, and it means I see you, and it's a greeting, but it has this very deep sense about I am not just myself as an isolated individual encapsulated in this flesh, but I am with my ancestors, I'm part of something greater. And when I see you, you are also not just this one individual alone in the universe, but you are part of something greater. And as we acknowledge each other, we are respecting each other. Respect in its Latin root simply means to see. So we're respecting each other and we're bringing each other into existence. So we do this as a ritual, and I would like to, everything that we do is also experiential, like I said, make it feelings, make it into your, experience it, embody it. And so I'd just like to ask you, could you turn to somebody and share that ritual of I see you, and the other person says, I am here. And then you might go back and forth once. I see you.
He's asking us.
I am here. I see you.
Doug?
Well, they're getting to know each other now. I don't want to break into that.
So people
Each other is
say,
far more profound. You know, I mean, obviously, I think I said my piece on it. I think we have to bring education on all levels back to what it's actually about, which is back to the level of the quality of human experience, the quality of community, the quality of our relationship to the environment, because we have no choice. Anything that's going in a different direction is committing, at this point, is committing suicide, both collectively and individually. The anxiety of the individual comes from that, and the collective disaster comes from that. From just a Buddhist on another level, I would really like to see us as a whole, all of us come together and really build and bring to the modern world the incredible wisdom all the way from the Pali Abhidharma through the Yogacara, through the whole. We have a mass of text and knowledge that has not been known to most people, not even 1%, of the totality of what the Buddha Dharma has to bring. And I think on another level, bringing that forward in some kind of way that people have a better access. A lot of translation that Lou and other people have done have started that. But even in the academic world where we have a lot of that text, it isn't yet found its way to where a place that practice always. So I guess I would hope that we can bring all the work that everyone's doing on all the levels in the last 30 or 40 years of bringing Buddhist texts into a place of practice, wherever that is, and make it accessible to all ages in a way that's appropriate to the age. So that would be my hope.
Well, thank you so much. Let's give a big round of applause.